The layer of the mulch against the soil is where you get nutrient infiltration, and that's where the bioactivity is. It's another edge effect between the two, but you really get the bioactivity there. Mulch adds organic matter to the soil, and that assumes it's an organic mulch. If it's not, it doesn't necessarily add organic matter. It reduces water use because it's decreasing evaporation. It increases the infiltration of the water, reduces erosion because it's helping to hold it down. And as an additional benefit, in the summer, it keeps the soil cooler. In the winter, it keeps the soil warmer. So it moderates soil temperatures. Water. The thing to remember, this is another mantra: slow it, spread it, sink it. This is what you're going to want to do with your water. Is you want to slow it down first. You want to spread it, make it go wider. That's going to help slow it as well. And then you need to have it infiltrate. So how does nature do it? This is our model. How does nature do it? Slows it through better infiltration, filters it through mulch and through soil and through other plants, passes it over stream beds to put oxygen into it, sterilizes it with sunlight, and it flows it through vegetation to clean it. So the purpose of bogs and marshes is to help clean the water. That's why they're on the oceans. They're along the oceans. That's where a lot of your marshes and bogs are, or along rivers and river deltas. This video, should it work, is by Brad Lancaster, who's from Tucson. And he's going to show you how you can conserve water. He wrote 2 books. They're probably carried in the store shop. I'm not positive. He touts them in his video. And let's see if we can get it to work. It has very low sound.
Let's look at a muffin tip.
Thank you.
So this is how most landscapes look. This is how most landscapes look. In the western United States, we tend to plant trees and other vegetation on top of these burial mound-like hills. So what happens when it rains on a landscape like this? Well, let's grab the rain and rain on it. So here comes all the free water from the sky and just runs right on off. And what happened down below? Well, that's where all the water went. And typically what you find is you'd be flooding downstream neighbors while dehydrating your site. So just an hour or so after the rain, you've got to turn on the irrigation system to replace those liquids you drained away. But there's all kinds of embodied energy into the water that you're getting from the tap, because there's pumps trying to pressurize that water and moving it from many miles away. So, the shift we need to make is to flip the muffin tip so it's the correct side up. And this way, instead of planting on top of mounds as the old way, we're instead planting beside, or in some cases within, these sunken water harvesting earthworks. So now what happens when it rains? Well, it starts raining, we start filling up these basins, these muffin tins. And then when they're filled, the water keeps going. But it's only the overflow that leaves the site, not all the flow of the site. Okay? And long after the rain has stopped falling from the sky, we've got all these basins, all these earthworks filled with water. And that water is now infiltrating the soil instead of running off and causing problems downstream. Now, the soil, unlike a muffin tip, is pervious. So you're not going to have standing water for more than 12 hours. If you've got it mulched and vegetated, all this will infiltrate. So you won't create a problem for mosquitoes. You'll be part of the mosquito solution because you will be removing the opportunity for water to puddle for long periods of time. Instead, you'll store the water within the soil. The vegetation will be your living pump, which lets you access the water in the form of fruit, passively cooling shade. I'm glad I'm in the shade now. Windbreaks, wildlife habitat, erosion control, and so forth. And to take this concept further, I want to show you another model. What I've got here is a to-scale model of a 4,400 square foot lot. And on top of that, about 1,000 square foot home. So what happens on a landscape like this when it rains? Okay? Well, same old story. Water just runs right on off. So when people hear about water harvesting, this idea of capturing that free, high-quality source of water that falls from the sky, they oftentimes think, I want to get tanks. So let's get some tanks. All right. So again, to scale, I've got a 1,700 gallon tank to go under that downspout, and another 1,700 gallon tank to go under that downspout. So let's see what happens now. All right, so we rain on it. We fill up the tanks. Woo, all right. Well, we did lose quite a bit of water from the runoff, running off of the general landscape. Nonetheless, it's still an improvement because we've got 1,700 gallons here, another 1,700 gallons here. Okay, that water would have been lost, but we kept it on site. All right? But what about the water we did lose? The water that ran off the general landscape. That, all too often, is the forgotten zone. Okay? People only think of roots and tanks. But we can store a much greater volume of water within the soil, the landscape, if we set it up to hold on to, absorb, and use that water. Basically, getting a sponge is what we need to do. A sponge of mulched and planted earthworks. So let's bring in those sponges. So, here's what happens. I've got 2 sponges. But rather than being above the ground, it would be more within the muffin tin basins. But this gets the general idea. So we will again rain on our little landscape. So here comes rain. We'll rain, not fill up the tanks. What already filled the tanks? That was quick. Okay, we lost a little bit of water runoff there, but nowhere near as much water as we lost before. So we're now part of the community's flood control system. Okay, because we're keeping the bulk of the rain on site rather than wastefully sending it off site where it has problems with our street. So I'm going to remove my house. So let's look at what we caught. And 1,700 gallons from that cistern, 1,700 gallons from this cistern. For total free that I was putting down on the water bill that I lost before, free from the sky, no water bill for this one. And look at how much water that is. Okay, now remember that amount. Let's now add to that the water from the sponge, the water we caught in the landscape. Okay, and this sponge. Look at that. 4 to 10 times as much water is what we caught in the cisterns. And what so you have level bottomed, bowl-like shapes that you then mulch with free organic matter. You plant it with vegetation, creating a living pump, and then the rain becomes your free passive irrigator of that landscape. Particularly if you're using indigenous or native vegetation already adapted to the local rainfall patterns and soil types. That's the easiest way. But you can also set it up to grow some exotic food to get some different on-site food production too, if you wish. But the key thing here is cisterns or tanks are a great way to harvest the rain, particularly if you want to use that water to drink, bathe with, or wash readily at hand. But don't forget the earthworks. Don't forget the general landscape. That's where we want to create these earthworks, and that's where we can capture the bulk of the water, and then use the plant, which is the living plant.
Okay, so we want to slow it, capture it in the soil. That's the best way. It's the largest storage device. Build the organic matter, contour it, as we show here, and add mulch. So increase the water holding capacity, prevent loss, and use it wisely. Slow it. You can slow it with swales. That's your first diagram there, first photo. Weirs, the series of steps. Check dams is a series of dams, but you could even use brush instead of the vertical brick things. Gabions, I don't know how many of you watched them build the gabions at Indian School in Tramway. It's a shopping center on a slope. And they actually built those gabions on site. They had cobble delivered, they had chicken wire or some kind of wire. And they built the gabions so they're walls, and they're in different heights, different tiers. So it helps hold the soil, slow the erosion, slow water when it comes down. Or you could use strong mats too. Water capture methods, 2, passive and active. Passive, as we're describing, is natural elements. Active is something man-made, usually cisterns or rain barrels. So passive, this is if you go back to the first video, this is what they created. It is a structure very similar to this, where they had certain trees on top and another set of trees more productive below the swale, and the swale has water in it. And what I found interesting here is here's where the water collects. So these can use more water than these up here. But if you have a series of these swales, the upper can take advantage of it too. Ways to passively capture it: roof capture, road capture, diversion channels, berms and soils, and dry streams and ponding basins. You want to catch it, store it, and use it, and direct it to where you need it. Other ways, curb cuts. This happens to be Oregon, but the same curb cut technique was used in the shopping center on San Mateo and Cutler. I don't remember the name of it, but
Pavilions.
what is it?
Pavilion?
Pavilions, okay. I'm not sure if that's right or not, doesn't matter. Rain garden is another way. The rain is coming off the roof, it's going down through gutters, and then that's being piped to, or it could be just a natural flow, to what I used to think of in the Midwest as a ditch. So they filled the ditch with soil, and they have a rain garden now, and they put native plants on that to help with pollination. But it gives you an idea of how you can capture it and how you can direct the water to where you want it. This, the City of Tucson Water Harvesting Guide Manual, Brad Lancaster worked on that, and he has so many different ways to capture water. And this is just one. He calls that a micro basin. And the next page has a whole series of different ways you can lay it out. The first one is what I call the fish scale approach, because you've got water coming in and it's overflowing into the next one. You have a pathway in the middle of this one, but it's not as geometric as this one, the next one is. This is for pathways, driveways. He tells you what each one of these is for, and then the last one's curb cuts. The one that's easiest is a localized depression. You can create that too. And here's the same thing on a slope. This is a heavy slope or a big slope and steep slope. And it uses a boomerang approach. And you can see that the tree is grown not dead into the soil, but up a ways. So it doesn't sit in water. The water drains off a little faster. Active methods: rain barrels, cisterns, dams, weirs, pumice wick. This shows the rain barrel, it shows a catchment dam, and a pipe leading out of it that has a control at the bottom so you can turn it on and off. And then here's your pumice wick. This is top-down view, front view, end view. And it shows how a pumice wick would work. The material around the pumice wick is the pumice. And this is perforated pipe. But that's a way of watering your property. Water spread it. So now we've got the zigzag pattern, another permaculture geometric approach. And you can see how that's going to slow it down and how at each turn it's actually using the water here with plants. So each of those plants takes advantage of it. Sink it. Did I miss a slide? No. So here, you're going to run it to a dry stream, and then the dry stream, if it needs an overflow, goes into this little lower basin. But you could lead it to plants, and the ones on the bottom side of the slope over here need more water than the ones above. Thoughts on quality. This is just, to think about. What quality do you really need? Does it have to be drinking quality water? That's why I'm kind of excited about gray water. So many plants can take advantage of gray water, and you don't have to pump drinking quality water to use on your landscape. Or can it come from stored water? And how many times can you reuse it before it leaves your property? Plants and animals. God, we have tons of animals. I'm going to go whipping through this way. I do want to talk about gills, and then there's practical strategies at the end. But this is a combination of plants that each have functions, and they function together well. So you have nitrogen fixers and mineral miners, spike roots, insectary to attract your beneficials. You have large, big-leafed plants that can provide mulch or shade, barrier plants, daffodils keep gophers out, marigolds for nematodes, and buckwheats apparently suppress weeds. I tried that. Some pest confusers, they do that with odor. So garlic, lavender, horehound mustard, and some climbers or supporters are all functions. And you can put those together. And here's your daikon radish and comfort. Insectiary, this is just a way of attacking a particular pest. I have daylilies, and so this is thrip, and he's already inside, or they are inside. Daylilies are trapped by thrips. Beneficial mites eat thrips. So what can I do to attract beneficial mites? Sunflowers. I plant sunflowers near daylilies, and I need something to support each. And this is like butterflies, if you don't have something that supports the caterpillar, it's not going to work. You need something for each life stage. Rotation, this is just a way of rotating the crops, but it provides each set of vegetables, in this case, each set with what they need. So it's a good rotation for providing the micronutrients or the macronutrients that they need. Selection, nutrient dense, self-fertile, with not too many chill hours, high disease resistance, short time to maturity, perfect crop. Animals, they can control vegetation and pests. So we've got the water animals, we've got the field animals, and the tamed animals here. But they complete the basic nutrient cycle, meaning they provide little fertilizer pellets. Soil fertility, the way the herds work in nature, I found really fascinating. Because I hadn't thought of it, I guess. Grazing patterns, they eat and they move. They eat and they move. That's the way they work. The effects of manure, because they're mobile, is redistributing minerals, carbohydrates, fiber, and amino acids, and you're moving it around. Hooves break up the soil. And the buffalo apparently were just amazing at that. At the way that they broke the soil. And the seasonal lack of moisture in Africa, the manure can add moisture when otherwise they wouldn't have moisture. And it speeds up the development of fertile soil. And as you can see, the sheep are the weed-eating assistant winemakers. I did that on my own. Okay, one chicken. This is just a great chart. If you can't see it here, you've got to go online and take a look at it. But it eats pests, reduces pest disease, and it talks here about how much it does of each of these. So this is a tills 50 square foot of sod in 4 to 6 weeks. So it does all this and it helps you do work. Some benefits, this is what they give us. These are some of the services that they perform for us. Using and feeding, if you're going to keep them on site and you don't want to bring inputs in, then you need to provide fruits, foliage, nuts, seeds, tubers. But how or what they do, chickens are good scratchers, and they're usually the first that you would bring on the land. Geese are going to graze, so they're going to eat down the weeds. The pigs are going to root out the soil. But if you bring the pigs into an orchard, they may tear up the roots. And ducks clean algae. However, those little fertilizer packets they leave are pretty messy. Practical strategies. Home garden. So these are some of the things that you can do in a home garden. Beds, you have a choice of different types of beds, and you can place them based on a number of visits. I found this information really interesting because it was a different way of thinking about where I'm going to plant things. And there's a really good example coming up, a diagram that you might be able to see easier. But strategies, sinuous plants, no rows, fully mulched, recycle your plants, green manure, cover crop, and cemetery plants, purchase in dust patches to attract birds. So here's the example. And it shows, this is the house. Here's the compost pile. Here's the herbs, a pond, some more herbs, the narrow beds, some keyhole beds for vegetables, broad beds for the ones that are long to harvest, a long time to harvest. Here's the trellis. So it has a lot of things that are really neat in an interesting layout based on how you visit them. Fire strategies. These are the things you need to do for fire. Small space, potato box. Large pots and containers over there. Tiered planting shelves. Next slide. Hanging baskets. Plant stacking. Window greenhouse. Trellises, espalier trees. Here's your espalier tree and vertical gardening. Here's some more. gutters on your fences. A bead trellis that's also a pathway. Other trellises, tiered beds. Suburban strategies, small greenhouse you can use. This is an example of all the things that you could do instead of a lawn. Small shade house, fruit trees, smaller grafted, polyculture and perennials. What Mollison said about, let me think how, I need to click it. Maybe that, no. I don't want to move it left or right. There you go. A house with 2 cars, a dog, and a lawn uses more resources and energy than a village of 2,000 Africans. That makes you think. Anyway, these are different things you can do in suburbia. Here's another picture: aquaculture, chicken tractor, composting, stacking, dryland orchard, fruit and nut trees using disease-resistant stock, some non-competing trees for windbreak, chickens once established, flowering plants below. Here's the diagram. Again, this is very similar to what they did in the first video. So how do you do it? These are the things. Basically, you follow the principles, but you do whatever you can.